Chinese reports on the Mongol raids highlight one key point. A recruit for Genghis Khan first learns to die for the unit, and only then to kill. The first thing they do to you in Genghis Khan's army is take away your name. You are no longer Ivan, Sergei, or Ahmed. You are one among thousands. Just another mouth to feed, another head to count, until you prove yourself. Forget the cinematic scenes with shiny armor and inspiring speeches before battle. Your first week is all about mud, fear, the stench of horse sweat, and a constant feeling of being out of place. And one thought in your mind: how to survive while you're being taught to kill. Imagine a steppe stretching to the horizon. No cities, no familiar roads, no walls, no houses. Just the wind, dust, and people who see your life as expendable. You're joining the most effective war machine of your time. But they don't explain the strategy. They don't show you the map of future campaigns. They don't even ask if you're ready. They just put you in line. In this story, we're not focusing on the great Genghis Khan from textbooks. We're interested in you, an ordinary person who suddenly finds themselves in his army. Not a general, not a hero, not the son of a chief. Just a rookie who still can't quite sit in the saddle. What happens to you on your first day? Where will you be assigned? What will you eat? How will you sleep? Who could kill you faster, the enemy or your own? They start breaking you down with the little things. You're given a horse you didn't choose, a bow you don't know how to use yet, an order you have to follow, even if you don't fully understand it. Genghis Khan's army isn't just a chaotic crowd of riders. It's a strict system where 10 people are responsible for each other's lives. If one runs away, all 10 could be executed. And in your first week, you start to realize mistakes aren't forgiven here. Let's go over what you'll see on your very first day when you arrive at the camp. What your teammates will look like. What you'll be ordered to do with the horse. What oaths you'll be made to take, even if you don't fully understand the language. We'll go through the days, from the initial shock to the moment you grasp the main rule. Here, it's not the strongest who survive, but those who can adapt. There won't be any beautiful romance of a nomadic life. It'll be a tough routine, waking up before dawn, training until you're exhausted, and a constant fear of messing up. You'll learn how to shoot while riding, eat less than you're used to, and sleep in places where an ordinary person wouldn't even sit down. By the end of the week, one question will stand before you. Not, can you kill? But, are you ready to be part of an army where your life is just a tool for a greater campaign? That's the week we're about to experience together, day by day. As if you really signed up to serve under Genghis Khan. The first 100 miles in Genghis Khan's army feel like you're barely hanging on to life, and they're watching to see if you'll break. They wake you up while it's still dark. The air is cold and damp, biting at your skin. You can hardly grasp what's happening. There are shouts, hurried movements. Horses are snorting, eager to bolt. No one explains the plan. There's no speech before the ranks. Just one short command. Ride. And you ride. At first, it seems like just a march. It's a bit uncomfortable, and sitting in the saddle hurts. But it's manageable. You're waiting for a break, thinking they'll let you rest, eat, and take care of business. But there won't be a break. The Mongolian army moves like no one else around. Hundreds of miles without a proper stop. The horses are trained. The people are too. But you're not. After a couple of hours, your muscles start to burn. Your back cramps up, and your fingers go numb. You're gripping the reins like a drowning person clinging to a stick. No one feels sorry for you. Your group of 10 isn't a friendly circle. It's a link in a chain. If one falls out, everyone weakens. So, there's no place for the weak here. You start to lag behind. First, it's just a few steps. Then, it becomes 10. Dust chokes you. You cough, tears fill your eyes, and you can barely see. Behind you walks the older one. He has a different look. He's neither angry nor kind. He's just watching to see who drops out. And if you fall too far behind, they might not push you along. They might just finish you off. It's not cruelty for the sake of cruelty. For them, it's just the way things are. An army that carries the weak gets slowed down. An army that slows down loses. Nobody feels sorry for the losers. You're just expendable. That's how they see you. By midday, you stop feeling your legs. You're not sitting in the saddle. You're just hanging on. Every jolt sends pain through your lower back. You find your balance not through skill, but by instinct. You're so thirsty that your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth. There's no water, just a shared water skin. If you drink too much, people will look at you like you're a thief. Food is scarce. A piece of dried meat, a little bit of milk. A Mongolian warrior is used to pushing himself forward on almost an empty stomach. But not you. You feel like you might pass out any moment. But the system is designed to not give you time to fall. No long breaks. Just a quick pause to change horses, tighten the girth, and take a sip. And once again, we move forward. The worst part doesn't happen in your body, but in your mind. At first, you hope it's just a temporary struggle. You think you can hold on until you reach the camp, where you'll finally get a chance to catch your breath. Then you realize, this is the new normal. Here, they're not testing your endurance. They're testing your breaking point. Those who start complaining, who cling to others, who ask to stop, they're already done for. Either their own command will finish them off, or they'll be left behind on the road, or they simply won't make it. By evening, you turn into a bundle of pain, fear, and anger. You stop thinking about Genghis Khan, about glory, about the spoils. You couldn't care less about the great campaigns. Your only wish is for it to be over. But it's at this moment that the crucial thing happens. You either break and fall away, and then your story ends right here on this road, in the dust, under the hooves, or something clicks in your mind. You accept that it is what it is, that no one is obligated to save you. Compassion is a luxury that this army can't afford. You start to cling to any comfortable movement of the horse. Your hands learn, not you. Your body instinctively finds a position that hurts a little less. You conserve every breath, every sip, every gesture. In that moment, you become part of the machine. Not because you want to, but because otherwise you're done for. The first 100-mile race is a filter. It sifts through people like sand through a sieve. Those who have gone through it are forever changed. Not a hero, not a veteran, but a person who has seen the true cost of this service for the first time. And by the time the camp finally appears, with campfires and horses in stalls, you realize something simple. Your life here is worth only as much as you can keep going, even when you feel like you can't anymore. At first, they mark the spoils just by numbers. Your name doesn't matter here, but you've already been counted as a trophy. The night over the camp is heavy, like a wet hide. The hum of voices, the snoring of horses, the smell of smoke and sour sweat. You think it's over, the race has ended, and you'll finally get a break. But it doesn't let up. While you're falling off your horse, someone is already counting. Not people. The spoils. Horses, saddles, armor, weapons, clothing, belts, cauldrons, bags of grain. Everything the army seized along the way, even before the big campaigns. The Mongols don't have chaos. Every trophy must be accounted for. At first, it seems incredibly simple. A person sits by the fire, holding a board, a bone, or a strip of birch bark. They listen to the sergeant's report and make notches. Not names, not details, just the numbers. So many horses, so many sheep, so many prisoners. To each group, they note how much loot they get. Not for individuals, but for the group. You're part of that group, but on paper, it's like you don't exist. You're just an extra back in the group, responsible for the spoils. Your situation is incredibly simple and terrible. You're not a warrior. You're not a slave. You're like an item in temporary storage. You've been assigned to a group of 10, just like an extra horse is added to a herd. Someone is responsible for you, but you have no rights. You don't get to take part in the sharing. You can't argue. You have no say in anything. But if a horse, a water skin, or a prisoner goes missing from your group, everyone, including you, will be held accountable. The Mongolian army doesn't rely on warehouses. She lives off what she steals from others. So keeping track of the loot isn't just a boring formality. It's about whether there will be food tomorrow and how to move forward. The trophies aren't just wealth. They're the fuel for the journey. And you're just seen as a resource for that fuel. Your squad leader looks at you not as a person, but as a unit to fit into the ranks. He doesn't care what your name is. It's important to him that now, out of his dozen, there are, for example, 5 extra horses and 2 new recruits. He already knows the horses, their behavior, their endurance. And you? You're not even as good as a horse yet. A horse will definitely carry the weapons and the meat. You can't say the same about yourself. You spend the whole first night grappling with this strange status. No one hits you or chases you away. But they don't really accept you either. You get a piece of meat, some leftover kumis, a spot by the fire. But from the looks you get, it's clear. You're not one of them yet. Real warriors sit closer to the center of the camp. That's where the veterans are, the most reliable ones, the ones who can take the hit. Newbies, trophies, and prisoners are on the edge. You're not sleeping among your own, but among those who don't even know if they'll survive tomorrow. In the morning, everything becomes even clearer. They do a head count again. They check what's left, who hasn't run away, who hasn't died. They count people along with the loot. Prisoners are counted separately, warriors separately, and recruits in between. They'll sum you up in a few words, assigned to a certain 10. That's the key point. The Mongolian army is built around groups of 10. 10 people is the smallest combat unit, but you're not fully part of that unit yet. You're not accepted into the brotherhood, and you don't have full responsibilities in battle. You're like a shadow. You ride with them, eat with them, carry their things, help with the horses. They're testing you on one simple criterion. If you can be useful, you'll become one of them. If you break down, get sick, or lose your horse or weapon, you'll be discarded like a damaged trophy. No one will waste time figuring it out. This system is harsh, but incredibly effective. It doesn't waste resources on those who can't keep up. For Genghis Khan, it's not about the number of people, but about the number of manageable groups of 10. Each group of 10 is a little war machine. And now, you've been attached to one of those machines, but for now, you're just a trailer, not a wheel. You feel it at every turn. When the sergeant hands out tasks, the seasoned warriors get the important jobs. Watching over the herd, checking the weapons, getting the gear ready for the march. You're stuck with the dirty, heavy, mindless work. Hauling water, cleaning hides, collecting manure for fuel. It's like they're deliberately trying to drag you down. Not out of spite, but for a reason. If you can handle this mess without complaining, stealing, or slacking off, then there's a chance you won't fall apart under pressure. If you start to dodge responsibility, hide, or pass your work off to others, the sergeant will notice right away. He knows that in battle, you'll do the same thing to avoid danger. In the evening, they count again. How much meat is left? How many horses are still standing? How many soldiers are still in line? And suddenly, you realize something simple. You're not being counted by your name or your achievements. You're just another line on the list, next to the spoils. The only way to get off that list of things and onto the list of warriors is to prove that you're not just alive, but that you're useful. Until that happens, you exist in between. Between being a person and a trophy. Between freedom and complete dependence. And it's in this suspended state that your first week unfolds. Every day, you live with the chilling thought, one wrong move, and you'll be erased just as easily as a notch is wiped off a tally stick. These marks in the scrolls determine everyone's place in line. The first person you truly see in this army isn't a hero, but the one who gets killed for being late. The morning doesn't start with a shout, but with a drumbeat. The dull sound tears through sleep like a whip crack. The first beat. The camp stirs. Horses snort, warriors jump up, grabbing their belts, bows, and quivers. The second beat. No one is asleep anymore. Everyone is either standing or running to their tent. Some are still tightening their belts, while others are pulling on their boots on the go. The third beat. By now, everyone should be in formation. Not just nearby, but right where they belong. And here's the simple truth that hits you. The drum in Genghis Khan's army isn't just a signal. It's a sentence with a 3-beat delay. The official story usually sounds softer. They talk about discipline, the laws of Yassa, a strict but fair order, as if everything is laid out beautifully and honestly. But in reality, it's much harsher and simpler. No one will care why you were late. You stumbled, dropped your saddle, couldn't wake your horse, didn't sleep well, got sick. No one cares. If you're not in line by the third strike, you're sending a signal to the team. You're the weak link. You can't be taken into battle, and you can't be trusted to watch someone else's back. And then, one of those dawns, you see how the system works without gunfire, without arguments, without long talks. One warrior is late. He's running, really trying. His boot is half on, his belt is undone. He jumps into formation just as the drum has already sounded. Half a second. His squad is already in position. The horses are ready, the people are in place, and there's silence. The sergeant turns his head. That glance is enough. No shouting. No panic. He just sees a person who hasn't managed to sync with the group's rhythm. In his eyes, that warrior is no longer human. He's a risk. He's a gap in the shield. Everything around seems ordinary. Someone adjusts their strap. Someone checks their bowstring. Someone wraps themselves in a hide. The latecomer is already being brought forward. There's no stage, no stands, no grand speeches about the law. This public display isn't for show. It's for remembrance. It's meant for everyone to remember not the words, but the image. A person is kneeling. Their hands are tied. No one reads the verdict. Everyone already knows the rule. If you didn't make it by the third strike, you've made your choice. You chose yourself over the order. And Genghis Khan's army doesn't forgive such choices. Execution takes less time than saddling a horse. A strike. Silence. No one screams. No one tears their hair out. No one rushes to save. Not because everyone is cruel. It's because everyone knows what's being tested isn't their conscience, but their fear. The chronicler will later write it down briefly and dryly. Anyone who was late by the third strike was executed according to the law. Just one line. No names, no details, no emotions, as if it were about a broken arrow. And this is where the beautiful legend of some special nobility of the steppe laws falls apart. No romanticism here. This isn't wise, measured justice. It's cold calculation. An army marching across half a continent can't afford delays, doubts, or weakness. It has to move as one organism. If any part falls out of sync, it's simply cut out. You stand in this formation and feel reality closing in. Just yesterday, being late was a minor inconvenience. Home, market, everyday life. Here, being late is a direct path to a pit in the ground. It doesn't matter who you are. The son of a nomad, a captive from a conquered city, a former craftsman. The drum beats for everyone the same. Official stories like to say that Yasa kept the army in perfect order, that everything was by the law, with wise reasoning. But the law here isn't about justice, it's about speed, about getting a massive crowd to move as one will. At the moment the signal goes off, no one should be thinking, doubting, or looking for excuses. And yes, this system worked. Genghis Khan took cities, crushed armies, and ventured where others wouldn't even dare to go. But the price of this effectiveness is now kneeling before you, with ropes on their hands. You understand one more thing. A public execution here isn't just a punishment for the latecomer. It's a lesson for everyone else. Every morning, when you hear the first strike, what comes to mind isn't the law, but the face of the person who was buried in half a second for a moment of hesitation. And so, through fear, through spectacle, through the silent agreement of the entire formation, Genghis Khan's army keeps its rhythm. Not through pretty words, not through voluntary enthusiasm, but through a simple thought. You either fall in line or you're left behind. And as the drum beats those 3 strikes over and over, you live with a clear understanding. They're not trying to reform you here. You're either shaped to fit the ranks or erased forever. In another account from the chronicler, another detail of the formation emerges. The moment the whip is about to hit your neighbor's face, you step forward. Not heroically. No shouting. You just shield him with your shoulder, as if it's the natural thing to do. The blow lands on your back. A dry sound, like someone snapping a thin stick against wet wood. The line freezes for a second. But only for a second. Because the drum doesn't wait. It keeps the beat. The Chinese guard watches from the side. He doesn't intervene. His task is different. He records. In his world, everything has to fit into the lines of a report. How many people? What order? How they hold themselves? How they obey? And now, a strange scene will appear in this report. One steppe dweller takes a hit for another. Not because he was forced to. Not because the law says so. But because he decided to do it himself. For the watcher, it's a minor detail. For you, it's the moment when something shifts. It hurts, but you stand firm. Your back is on fire, breathing is hard. Yet, you hold your ground. Because if you bend, if you groan, they'll finish you off, according to the rules. The commander watches closely. He's in no rush. He sees that you haven't fallen, haven't backed down, haven't started making excuses. And in that moment, another layer reveals itself in this harsh environment. Here, they don't value pretty words. They want to see if you can endure. The Chinese chronicler will later write it all down matter-of-factly. One warrior took the punishment for another. The formation remained intact. Discipline was upheld. For him, it's just an example of iron training. He sees the scene from the outside. Neat rows. Obedience without arguments. A clear signal. A clear reaction. But inside, it's a different story. You stand there and feel a strange mix churning within you. The fear hasn't gone away. The law is still there. The pit in the ground is still nearby. But along with that, another support emerges. You know that your neighbor is now indebted to you. Not out of goodwill, but because of an unspoken rule. You had his back today, so tomorrow he'll have yours. Or he'll face shame if he doesn't. Genghis Khan's army isn't just held together by the fear of punishment. It's woven from these little debts, from silent exchanges, from the fact that there's someone next to you who owes you something, and you owe him too. The commanders understand this. They see that after the strike, the formation didn't even flinch. No one stepped forward to beg for mercy. No one tried to argue. The punishment was carried out. The rhythm didn't break. And within the ranks, a bond has formed that isn't visible in the reports. The Chinese sentry looks at your faces. To him, you all seem the same. The same hats, the same quivers, the same horses. But he doesn't see how now 3 people beside you are glancing your way, out of the corner of their eyes. They remember, not the name, the action. In his record, there will be just one line. The army stands in formation, the punishments remain harsh, and the people obey the law, without names, without details, without emotions, as if it's about a broken arrow. But behind that line lies something invisible from the fortress wall. An army that lives not just in fear, but also in this strange, tough brotherhood, where taking a step forward under fire could cost you your life. Or it might mean that in the next battle, you'll survive because someone remembers that day. For the watchman, it's just another episode. For you, it becomes a rule for survival. The law from above weighs down like a heavy stone slab. But even between those slabs, people still manage to weave their delicate threads. And while the chronicler writes another neat line about the discipline of the steppe warriors, something is born within the ranks that he will never see. A quiet, firm agreement among those standing shoulder to shoulder. In another report, the focus has already shifted to the mounted warrior. The scribe notes that the rider makes 3 mistakes while inventorying the gear. This part needs a closer look at the facts. In another document, they record the very act of checking the entries. The official story about this army lies to you with its silence. The chronicles are all smooth. The troops arrived. The troops formed up. The troops obeyed. Dry lines, as if talking about bags of grain that were counted and stored in the barn. But in one archive, within the Sinicized Mongolian office, the scribe's hand suddenly stumbles. He is supposed to record everything. And then he makes a strange entry. The same writer makes mistakes 3 times in a row while copying the gear. 3 times. In an army where any sloppiness is punished, where a squad leader is held accountable for each person, this is no small matter. What's important isn't just that he made a mistake. What matters is that it was recorded at all. This means the story has gone beyond a simple reprimand. So, there was a lot of noise around. A check. Doubts. Another line appears in a different document. Not even about the rider, just about the fact of the check itself. The scribe notes that the equipment count was reviewed. This means someone up top thought something down below didn't add up. The official story paints a perfect machine. Orders were given. They were carried out. Reports were filed. Everyone's happy, except for the enemies. But in reality, in the paperwork, this discrepancy comes to light. An ordinary warrior, just a simple horseman, gets confused with the numbers. Either there are fewer arrows, or the strings are wrong, or the spears don't match the previous record. His sergeant is getting angry. The captain already knows this is going to escalate, and overseeing all of this is the clerk. He's not a warrior. He's not a hero. But he needs to check the box. Made a mistake. Fixed it. Double-checked. At first glance, it seems like nothing. But if you roll all the documents into one strip, a strange picture emerges. The further you get from the battlefield, the fewer living people you find in the paperwork. Up top, in the report, it's just numbers. So many riders. So many bows. So many arrows. The lower you go, the more rough edges you see. Here a warrior fell ill. There a horse died on the way. Over there, someone miscounted. And every time, the office records the less flattering details. Not victory, but failure. Not glory, but doubt. The official version loves to talk about iron discipline. It's often said that Genghis Khan's warriors are all the same, like nails in a box. But that's not what the archive is really about. The archive reveals how this discipline is constantly being fixed, adjusted, and patched up. Where the myth claims flawless, the documents say corrected. Where the myth whispers impeccable order, you find recheck lurking below. In your first week, it all seems straightforward. You're put in line, counted, and your horse is counted too. Your arrows are being counted. And then someone nearby starts counting again, and again, and again. It's that same rider from the record. For him, it's not just an abstract inventory. It's a day when one wrong number could change his entire life. If the report doesn't match the number of arrows, it won't be ink that pays the price, but his skin. And here's the main contradiction. The official story says they were perfect because they never made mistakes. The archive whispers something entirely different. They were terrifying, not because they were flawless, but because the system allowed no room for mistakes. Every misstep was instantly turned into an event, into a case, into a record, into a warning for others. 3 mistakes by one rider become evident on paper. This means that in reality, around that episode, there was a tense silence from the entire unit. This is not a legend. This is not a pretty tale. This is the mark left by a living person in a dead document. You'll hear that Genghis Khan's army was like a united fist. But if you listen closely to the archives, you can hear the fingers in that fist constantly cracking to keep it from opening up. In a parallel case in the archives, there's an almost identical entry. In another case, in a different folder, there's another dry, boring line. But behind it, you can still sense a real person who desperately wanted to survive that day. There's another horse that didn't make it. Another check on the numbers. Once again, they don't add up. Different places, different teams, different years. But the pattern remains the same. Neatly written in the margins. Check again. This is the voice of the system you're caught up in. It doesn't speak out loud, but with ink. There's no trust in just words. No. Okay, we'll sort it out later. Every nail has to be in place. Every spear counted. Every bow linked to a name. Names are rarely written in full. More often than not, it's a mark, a wound, a sign. The younger brother of so-and-so. A person from such and such a lineage. In the office, you're neither a hero nor a warrior of fate. You're just a line that ties down property. A bow, a quiver, a horse. And as things unfold, It's clear this isn't just about paper greed. It's a way to keep an army in check. If one bow goes missing from 100, they'll shake down the whole 100. If one horse doesn't add up in a 10, they'll hold the 10-man accountable. Every little thing becomes a reason for investigation. Not because they love order, but because they control people through things. When historians come across such records, they primarily see a system. But if you read more slowly, you start to notice the pulse. Here, the sergeant appears too often in the records. There are too many corrections next to his name. This means that those at the top already know he's the weak link. On the other hand, here's a senior officer who goes a long time without any remarks. Straightforward numbers, rare rechecks. Everything adds up the first time. To the higher-ups, he's reliable. To the folks below, he's probably tough. Because you can't get these results any other way under these conditions, the documents show how fear spreads throughout the organization. The higher you go, the drier the wording. The lower you go, the closer it gets to the reality. Here, it's issued based on headcount. Here, it's taken from the one at fault. Here, a horse was replaced at the family's expense. It's formally a record-keeping system. But really, it's a chain of accountability that stretches from Genghis Khan's court down to the poorest of the poor. You enter this living registry from your very first week. Someone scribbles your name awkwardly at a low table. They mix up the letters, ask you to repeat it, and focus more on the numbers beside you than on you. And at that moment, it becomes clear how real power works in such an army. It's not in grand speeches. It's not in legends of brotherhood. You have the power to include someone in the line and the power to take them out. Archive records show this without any emotion. Here, 10 people didn't make it on the trip. Over there, 100 returned not quite whole. Families have to deal with the losses. This isn't a story about one brilliant mind that created the perfect army. It's a story about a vast network of small, tough, sometimes unfair decisions written down on paper. And you get caught up in this network right away, without any preparation. You're not asked if you're ready for perfect discipline. You're just pushed into it. If you don't fit in, there'll be another short entry in the archive. No emotions, no judgments, no details. Out. Replaced. The responsible person is warned. In the legend, such people vanish without a trace. In reality, they leave a faint, almost invisible mark in the margins of the record, which through the ages reveals the main point. This army wasn't held together by some mythical iron will. She believed that everyone, from the bottom to the top, lived with the constant feeling that any move you make could turn into a line that would ultimately decide your fate. In a related case, the Foundation is recording the same episode again. The real power in Genghis Khan's army didn't come from a general's shout, but from crooked lines in a dusty ledger. Just look at how it's all laid out in the documents. The files in the Foundations contain cases with no heroism or drama. Only names, labels, numbers. And these numbers affect real people. They recorded 12 warriors once. Then they checked again. The numbers matched. That means no one cheated. No one hid their son. No one took someone away from service. It's rare to double-check anything, but when they do, everything lines up, right from the start. That says something about the system. Not the chaos of nomads, but a strict, cold machine. For the top brass, the one who keeps these records is a trustworthy person. You can trust him. He keeps things in order. For those at the bottom, he's probably an executioner without a sword. Because you can only get such perfect numbers by making people afraid to make mistakes. Fear runs through the whole hierarchy. At the top, the paperwork is dry. We're short on people. Hold the responsible accountable. It's as if they're talking about living men, not sacks of grain. The lower you go in these documents, the closer you get to the reality. One sheet clearly states, issued according to the number of heads. Not by souls, not by families, but by heads. In another sense, the horse is replaced at the family's expense. So if your horse dies, they don't want to lose you, but your relatives will have to pay. In this system, a horse is worth half a person. And this isn't about emotions, it's strict accounting. Each such record is connected by a thin thread upwards to Genghis Khan's decree. From the vast decree down to the last yurt in the steppe, there's a chain of responsibility. Orders and norms come down from above. Explanations and justifications rise from the bottom to the top. At each level, someone responds with their head. You enter this chain from the very first week. Not in words, but on paper. Your name gets added to a list. Someone in a cell with the army sits on a low stool, leans over a board or scroll, and tries to write down your name. They mix up the letters and ask for clarification. They don't care who you are. They're looking at the column next to them. How many others like you are there? How many horses? How many bows? He doesn't see faces. He sees numbers in a row. And at that moment, the real mechanism of power becomes clear. It's not in battle cries. It's not in legends of brotherhood in the steppe. True power lies in the right to write you into a line, and in the right to later cross you out. In the archives, it looks almost lifeless. A dozen didn't get people to the gathering place. 100 returned incomplete. Families have to make up for the losses. No explanations about how it happened. They don't care about fatigue, illnesses, or accidents. What matters is that the numbers add up. This shatters the usual picture. It's not a story about one genius who built a perfect army with charisma. It's a story about a network of small, tough, routine decisions. Who's responsible for a dozen? Who for 100? Who exactly to punish? Who to make pay the price? This network is anchored on paper just as firmly as it is on fear. You get thrown into it right away. No one tries to convince you. There's no psychological prep. You're just told where to stand, who you're assigned to, and who's in charge of you. If your squad leader is weak, he'll take the hit. If he's too harsh, you'll be the one to suffer. The system doesn't care about the details. If you don't fit in, it's noted just as coldly. Another short line? Dropped out. Replaced. Supervisor notified. In the legends of conquests, such people simply vanish, erased in the dust of the steppe. But their deeds remain. Sometimes it's a faint note in the margins, barely visible, written in a different hand. A drop of ink that traveled there over 8 centuries. In one document, there's a shortage of people, while in another, the same number shows a replenishment from families. And through this coincidence, the main point becomes clear. This army didn't exist solely because of the mythical iron will of one Khan. She stood with a total sense of accountability. Everyone felt deep down that any action, any mistake, any cowardice, or loss of a horse could become a line. And that line would decide whether you continue to live, who would be punished in your place, and who would pay for your actions with the cost of an entire family. In the related description of the fund, the same episode is clarified again. The scariest thing in Genghis Khan's army isn't the sword at your throat, but the foreign hand that writes your fate in a line. Это разрушает весь романтический образ свободы степей. Никакой свободы нет. Есть регистрация, есть учет, есть люди, которые решают, будешь ты жить дальше или нет. И все это выглядит так скучно, что становится еще холоднее. В легендах все прекрасно. Хан, знаки на небе, клятвы на крови, братство, верность, великие походы. А в реальной жизни все сводится к нескольким сухим строкам. Десяток не довел людей до места сбора. Сотня вернулась неполной. Семьи должны компенсировать потери. It's all about the numbers. No one writes about who died from illness, who fell behind, or who was thrown from their horse and broke their neck. There's no interest in who was scared, who burned out, or who couldn't handle the transitions. The only thing that matters is that the figures don't add up. That means someone will pay for it. And that's when you really see how power operates. Not through inspiring speeches or the personal charm of a leader, but through the authority to place you in the right spot on the chart. And the right to strike out. This isn't a pretty picture of a perfect army created by the will of one genius. It's a network, tough and intricate, like a fishing net. Each knot is a small decision. Who's responsible for a dozen? Who for 100? Who's accountable for one person not making it? Who will be forced to give up their horse? Who will be pulled from their family to cover someone else's shortfall? You can almost see it in the documents. Here's the inventory. So many people, so many horses, so many bows. Here's a note, a shortage. Next to it, another one, a replenishment from families. The numbers add up. That means somewhere in the yurt, someone silently gave up their last adult son, or their last working horse. Because that's how it played out on paper. Not out of fairness, not out of conscience, just by the line. You come in like a new recruit and dive into this system without any introductions. No one asks if you're ready. No one has conversations with you. No one promises you glory. You're just given a number. They tell you where to stand, who you're assigned to, and who's responsible for you. That's it. After that, you're no longer yourself. You're just a unit under someone's responsibility. If your squad leader is weak and loses people along the way, it's on them. If they're tough and take it out on you, it's on you. But in the end, it all sounds just as cold. Out. Replaced. The responsible one is notified. Each of those words represents someone's life, someone's broken fate, a family left without a provider. But in the text, it's just 3 short strokes. In beautiful stories of conquests, these people vanish. They're not in the songs, they're not in the legends. They've disappeared into the steppe. Yet, in the documents, they're stuck forever. Sometimes it's a barely noticeable note in the margins, written in a different hand, added later. A tiny annotation that changes the meaning of the whole thing. 3 people were missing here. Exactly 3 people were added from families there. A coincidence in numbers. And with this coincidence, it becomes clear. What you see isn't the chaos of a nomadic horde, but a cold machine of accounting. This army lived not just in fear of the Khan, but in fear of the record. Everyone, from the lowest to the highest, understood that any mistake could turn into an entry. It didn't matter what actually happened. What mattered was how it would be recorded. If you lost your cool, got scared, fell behind, lost your horse, got sick, or ran into a storm, you wouldn't be treated with any humanity. You're being recorded, and then the line decides for you. Who will respond? Who will be taken? Who will be punished? Who will be forced to give up their horse or their son? In a neighboring case, the same episode might come up again, but with more details. Another signature. Another note. As if the system is saying, we haven't forgotten anything. We've seen it through to the end. Everybody, every horse, every loss will find its place in the report. And this is where it becomes clear that the true power of this army was not just in its ability to fight. She was in a situation where you wouldn't even have the right to disappear without a trace. In the next case of the archive, the same fact is confirmed again. You would be more afraid of ink on rough, hard paper than of arrows. In the Mongolian army, your life immediately became just a line. You're still a person. Your hands are shaking. You're looking back at the yurts, at your family. But in the records, your 10 is already there. Your family. The name of the one who will be responsible for you. These aren't legends or songs. These are dry, real cases sitting in the archives. There's no heroism there. It's all about the records. In one case, there are a dozen people. Each one has a note attached. What family they come from, who they report to, how many horses, how many bows, how many arrows, and most importantly, who is in charge. That person will answer for you. If you disappear on the way, get sick, fall behind, die, drown, or freeze, no one there cares about it as a story. It looks like this: out, lost, replaced. In the neighboring case, it's already clear how it all ended. Somewhere in another list, the same number of people has been added from families. The same ones, the same 10, the same emptiness, filled with new bodies. There were 10, now there are 10 again. Between the lines lies a shared pain, just a bare outcome. And in these numerical coincidences, the real mechanism reveals itself. Not a horde charging blindly, but a cold system where everything is accounted for. Every person is like a pointer on an abacus. In one document, the name of the sergeant is highlighted. It notes that he failed to keep his men. In another, there's already a note that he was replaced. No emotions, just facts. A broken reputation, a shattered fate. On paper, it looks like a neat line in ink. The worst part is something else. You can't hide in emptiness. If your horse dies, it's recorded. If someone sent their son to battle in their place, that's noted too. You can see entire chains in the documents. One person dropped out. Another stepped in to take their place. A third paid for someone else's mistake with their own child. Sometimes there's a gap between two cases. The first one has no details, just a brief note. The second one goes into detail: where they found people, who they took horses from, which family they got an extra 10 from. The lines overlap and create a rhythm. Losses, additions, those responsible. And you start to understand how fear really worked. It wasn't just the Khan's wrath that people feared. They were also afraid of becoming just another dry entry in the records. Because a record doesn't argue. It doesn't make excuses. It doesn't tell the real story of what happened. You could heroically shield a comrade with your own body. You could miraculously survive a blizzard. You could panic and run away, then come back. But in the records, it all looks the same. Left behind. Returned. The responsible one was warned. What we usually call a horde was counted almost like bookkeeping. How many yurts belong to this clan? How many warriors they are required to provide? Who has already served? Who still needs to? These numbers move from document to document like a sentence. The archive shows that the Mongolian army relied not just on the leader's charisma, not only on a religious idea, not just on strict discipline. It was also fueled by the fear of paper, where your life is summed up in 3 words. You could have died somewhere in the snow, in a foreign valley. Your body might never have been found, but in the report, you still came back, like a little note written in a different hand. Confirmed again. Recorded. Closed. A living person turned into a number. And it's only through those numbers that you can see how efficiently Genghis Khan's machine operated. It wasn't just about conquering half the world. It was about making sure that even your death didn't disrupt the plan for a single moment. In the neighboring folder of the fund, the same fact is recorded separately. The scariest thing about Genghis Khan's army isn't even the sword, but the line in the report where your life is summed up in 3 words. In the archives, it almost looks beautiful. Neat columns, black ink, clear names. There's a folder on the shelf containing a list, and you're on that list. No emotions, no judgments, no story. For us, the horde sounds like chaos. Shouts, cavalry, steppe, flames. But behind it was a quiet, cold accounting system. First comes the clan. From each clan, a warrior. And this isn't just a legend. It's all in the documents. One paper states how many people each clan is supposed to send. Names, clans, obligations. The next one has notes. Who didn't show up? Who sent their son instead? Who lost their horse in battle? It's not a novel. It's just plain text, but you can see the lives of real people in it. There's a brief note in one file. Absent. After a few pages, another name appears. It took his place. Then there's another entry. Someone paid for the same person, with a child. Not a metaphor, but a direct record. The shortfall was covered by the family. Sometimes years pass between events. The first document just states the fact. A warrior is missing. The second one goes into detail. Where they sourced replacements, which clan they took extras from, and who had their horses confiscated. It's like someone is methodically stitching up a hole in the fabric of the army. The lines start to overlap. Losses, reinforcements, those in charge. Names change, but the system stays the same. Every action has someone who will be held accountable later. This reveals how fear operated. It wasn't just the fear of execution. It wasn't just the shame in front of their peers. They were afraid of becoming that very record that explains nothing. Because paper doesn't listen. She doesn't understand why you fell behind. She doesn't care that a blizzard hit you, that your horse stumbled in the dark, or that you dragged an injured comrade. To the archives, you're just a line. You could have survived the battle, escaped the encirclement, made it through the storm. You could have performed a feat that would be whispered around the campfires. But in the records, it all looked the same. Fell behind. Returned. The responsible one was warned. What we like to call a horde operated almost like a well-organized accounting system. How many yurts come with this clan? How many warriors are they required to provide? Who has already served? Who still needs to? These numbers flow from one document to another, like a sentence that always catches up with you. The archives reveal a simple truth. The Mongolian army was not just held together by fear of the Khan. It wasn't only about the idea of a great campaign or harsh punishments. What really held it together was the certainty that you would be counted before and after your death. You could have perished in the snow, far from your loved ones. Your body might have vanished in the steppe. Yet in the reports, you still came back, by someone else's hand, in a different handwriting. Confirmed again, recorded, closed. A living person turned into an entry on a list. And it's through these cold lines that you can see how meticulously Genghis Khan's machine operated. It wasn't just about conquering half the world. It was about making sure that even your death fit neatly into the plan. In the neighboring folder, the same fact is recorded again, this time in a different report. It's as if the system is whispering to itself. Nothing is lost. Everything is in place. Even the dead. In a separate inventory, the same fact is noted a second time. The official picture of the horde starts to crack when you open the real archive. Not legends, not the chronicler's retellings. Just boring, at first glance, handwritten tables. And there you see. Behind every beautiful myth lies an excruciatingly precise record. There's no heroism here. It's all about people and horses. About those who didn't make it and those who came back. about the one who's now in charge of it all. The soldiers in these documents don't look like people at all. It feels more like an inventory log. How many arrived? How many were lost? Who reported it? Who signed off, acknowledging they understood who's now being monitored? And that's what shatters the usual picture. These aren't random notes. They're not personal entries from a caring commander. This is a system that stretches across different documents, over the years, through campaigns. The same person can appear in 3, 4, or even 5 records. First, they're listed as part of a unit. Then they're marked as missing in action. Later, it's noted that they returned. And right next to that, you'll find the name of the person responsible for it. You can see how fear was woven not into the shouts during roll call, but into these lines. There was no room for error. Every loss had to be accounted for. Every straggler, every fallen soldier, every horse that didn't make it left a small mark that weighed on the living. No excuses. The paperwork doesn't care that a blizzard hit during the march. It doesn't matter that you were dragging an injured comrade or stayed behind to cover the retreat. All that matters is the fact. Absent. Returned. Recorded. The responsible one has been warned. And that's when you realize why this army didn't fall apart. We tend to think that the horde was held together by fear of the Khan and harsh punishments. But the archives tell a different story. The fear was targeted. Personal. It wasn't about an abstract punishment will come, but rather a very specific, your name will be written down where you don't want it to be. The system didn't forget. If you went on a campaign with a certain clan, from a specific number of yurts, that number followed you like a leash. It determined how many warriors your clan had to provide. Who has already served? Who still owes? The numbers shift from report to report, making sure no one can just fade away into the steppe. There are documents where the same event is recorded twice by different people. First in the field list, then in the overall report. The fact remains the same, but each time it gets reaffirmed, confirmed again. It's as if the machine is checking itself. Is everything in place? Is anything missing? Are all the dead counted just as carefully as the living? This doesn't feel like a chaotic horde swept across the world by a hungry wind. It feels more like a carefully organized war ledger. Here, death isn't the end of the story. It's just a line that needs to be closed properly. You could vanish in the snow. You might not be found after the battle. But in the records, you still came back. Your details made it to the next report, adjusted the totals, balanced the sheets. A living warrior became just another entry in a table. And this table worked without mercy. It didn't matter how you died. What mattered was where you were recorded. And here comes the main blow to the familiar legend. Genghis Khan won not just because he was a brilliant military leader and terrified half the world with his name. His army triumphed because every person, every horse, every 10 existed both on the ground and on paper at the same time. History loves to talk about the wild horde that sweeps over cities like a massive wave. But down below, beneath this wave, the parchments rustle silently. Reports, summaries, lists.